Okay, so call this my official first tutorial. Peanut butter, gringo butter as we call it. So the simple is just, actually you can see this has already been used, so I already made a batch. While I'm making it, I was deciding, hey, I should make a video so I can show people how easy it is to make something so absolutely delicious and healthy. I think it's healthy. Anyway, so you want a nice molidor food processor. I prefer this one, the style. There's some top-loading ones, and I find that the separation between the blades and the bottom is so high that you're unable to really grind up the peanuts to a way that's satisfactory. So anyway, this one, which kind of looks one of these dome ones, this one is a I always thought it was Sinden. Sindelin. But there's a couple brands that basically look the same. But that's the, in my experience, that's the ideal one. So really simply, you just add some peanuts. You don't want to use salted peanuts because it's just gonna, you might want to put some salt in afterwards, but you really only want to put a very small amount of salt, and the salted peanuts, it's just going to have way too much. I've never tried it, but I imagine it would just be really, really unpleasantly salty, and I actually prefer to have no salt. And so I had a little bit left over from that bag, but it's not really about, you know, if you buy, I used to buy the bags in the supermarket, had about this much, and I found those to be about the right size. I think they were about 180 grams. Actually, I have a bag here, so I should probably use at some point. But yeah, they're 180 grams. I would buy like these bags. This size is just about the perfect quantity. But having made it so much, I just sort of know, and so you don't want it too high, because when it does start to grind, it's going to be a little hard. And so that's about the right quantity. A little bit below, you can see, a little bit below the top right there is a good level. And so you drop the top on and you just grind. Now you don't want to grind if you want to waste the motor for too long. And you can see it's getting sort of pulverized, and you just want to keep going. Now as you're going, it will eventually, as it gets finer, it will naturally start to clump up. And it's already starting to do it. It's not really moving, so for better or worse, I kind of, at that point it's still, but eventually I'm going to have to open it up and just sort of massage it. I don't have to worry about losing my finger because there's a nice safety mechanism on this. And as you keep going, now it's really clumped. Kind of give it a shake. Now, if you just kept going, eventually you would get a nice creamy substance, but you would really, it would be at expense of burning out the motor, which I'm not really interested in doing. And then once it cools, it's going to be almost really rock hard, so that's where the secret comes in, which I'll get to in a second. Just about there. Yeah, now you can see, even here, for example, I'll take some out. It's pretty clumpy. And it's already started to take some of the oils out. So you could see that if you really kept going, it would pull the oil out of the nuts and create a nice little creamy substance. But again, at the cost of burning your motor. So the secret is, and I always find the same one. You can find some other ones, but you can find these in Chinese food stores. And I get this one. It's not quite a liter. I think it's 600 milliliters. And it is a little, sure, it's a lot more expensive than you would expect for, say, even an olive oil. I think this small bottle is like 5,000 pesos, but it really goes a long way. You can use the peanut oil for other things. It makes really good popcorn. But I tend to just save it for this. I've got some unground peanuts here. Maybe those will get in there, but a little chunk is okay. And what I do here, I've never measured it. Maybe I should, but I just kind of start to pour around. You got to be really careful. It'll come right out, and then you'll just come up with something. Whew. And I'll add a little in. Now, if it doesn't come out the consistency you like, you can always go back and add a little more. But I add about that much. Now, I've already made some, and it came out, you can't really see it that well, but it came out a little creamy. So sometimes, because I'm generally making about 3 batches at a time, I find that with this quantity, to fill this 1 liter jar, I'd have to make about 4 batches. But sometimes, because of so much grinding, there's a safety mechanism so you don't burn out the motor, that it'll stop working sometimes after 3 batches. And so I generally make 3, but that's fine, and that'll last me. Although I'm quite the gringo peanut butter sandwich eater, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so one of these with about 3 batches lasts me at least a couple of weeks. So I was going to say, sometimes I make 1 batch and has a little too much oil, so I don't have to worry about another batch having the right amount, because by mixing it up, it'll just sort of even out. And you can see now it's starting to mix with the oil, and this is actually coming out pretty ideal. But it's a lot trial and error. It depends. I mean, maybe you like it chunkier, not as oily, and maybe you like it super, super creamy. But again, if you make one and it comes out really, really, really creamy because you put too much oil in, then make another batch. And hopefully you're remembering, put a little less oil in the next time. And it's basically ready. I like to just get a little bit more. But again, you just want to kind of top this. Holding it down for too long really warms up the motor. And that accumulated heat will eventually eventually this is going to die, and I'm going to have to buy another one. And man, we're just about there. You don't want to do it too much. It should pretty much already be ground up, but I like to go a little bit more. And if you like, you can always sort of, I suppose, I've never really tried this, but if you like a crunchier texture, you might want to try grinding up a separate batch of peanuts. Not too fine, you don't want it absorbing the oil, but too much anyway. And then mixing it in to have sort of a crunchier texture, but I usually just go with it like this. And you can see with the final product, I should do this over a jar, and that's another thing. This is always a very messy process. No matter how hard I try, I always find little tidbits of peanut butter everywhere. And so here you can see the final product, and it just sort of goops in, and that's an ideal texture. And then I'll usually, taking the top, I actually should do that first, getting a mess. I'll pull out the blades and sort of swipe out again, because that peanut butter will just drip and get everywhere. It'll get somewhere you don't see, get on your shoes, and then it gets somewhere else. And I'll usually just kind of pull this off and taste test. Ah yeah, yums. Now again, at this point, well, certainly once you have it in the jar, you might want to add a little salt, depending on your preference, but honestly I find, and again, that just kind of gets everywhere, and I'll just sort of scoop it in. Little by little. I don't know, am I off camera? First time doing this. There we go. And just very carefully, 1 scoop at a time, not trying to get too much, because you get too much and then it ends up, again, ends up all over the place. You're never really going to get all of it out. I mean, afterwards you could, you know, with your finger run it along the side and get the sides. Little snacks. Now there's a couple things that I wanted to add. One, the oil is really important. When I first started doing this, actually the woman who explained me the process when I had my hostel, and I had an American woman in my house, and she was explaining about making peanut butter. And she tried using vegetable oil and other types of oil, and it just is not going to come out good. I've never tried it because I've talked to her, and based on her experience, I don't want to make the same mistake. I suppose it would come out okay, but it would taste kind of strange. And so you really want to use peanut oil. It does cost more, but again, you're really using very small amounts. And so this bottle, if I'm just using it to make peanut butter, lasts a pretty long time anyway. Now when you go to make, I'm basically done. That's actually I went between, I made a batch and then I stopped, and actually this is another batch from the one I originally started with. But when you go to make your batch, before putting the blade in here, what you want to do is, granted depending on if you're eating it for yourself or you're sharing it with other people, but again we'll assume you're sharing it with other people, you want to clean this inner part here, because if not, you put this on and the peanut butter gets stuck way down in there and it's never really all going to come out, and then after a period of time it's going to maybe get moldy or something. You don't want that in your food, especially even inside here. It's going to get inside there, and so you're going to want to clean the outside. Again, it's just made for myself, so I just use my finger, but for the purpose of the video, just get some paper towels and clean that innermost part, just for general good health and hygiene. And that's pretty good. And then even here, sometimes some will start to get stuck there. You might want to get a little knife. This one looks pretty good. And so when you put it back on to make your next batch, you don't get peanut butter that's going to really never come out. Yeah, and there you go. I've made 3 batches, and again, it makes about, I don't know, 3/4 of it full. I could get one more batch in here, but it'd be the risk really of wearing out the motor, and that's enough. That's fine. So, enjoy. Desi.